Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Eric, KJ4YZI with HamRadioConcepts, totally unscripted, keeping you informed on all these vast areas of this hobby we call amateur radio. And something here that may be new to you but is not new to the hobby, I want to talk about Winlink. And if you're wondering, what is Winlink? Have you heard of Winlink? Well, picture that I'm going to show you how to send an email with something like this, which is a Bluetooth TNC by Mobilinkd and a dual band handheld or even a VHF handheld, and show you how to send an email over 2 meters. It's a really cool feature. After that, we'll talk about how to send an email without these units, but just a sound card interface over HF and send an email on 40 or 20 meters. It's something that can be very beneficial for some EMCOM, emergency communications. Going into hurricane season, something like this VHF packet will be around when cell phones go down. So something like this has been a total part of a sailor's life. When people are out in the water, how do you think they get emails to and from out in the water for 2 months at a time? They do it over Winlink. Email over RF. Let's get into it. So to sum it all up and make it easy for you to understand, if you're familiar with packet or you've heard people talk about a TNC or a terminal node controller, a TNC basically does the magic between your computer software and the radio, putting it into packets of audio that are transmitted, in different blocks and all that. So back in the day, long ago, TNCs were these big sophisticated units, or then they had the Cantronics, and those still go for a pretty penny, those Cantronics, but those are serial based and involve more cables and everything else, and it makes it so much easier to use this Bluetooth TNC as a adequate adaptation. And basically what this is doing is connecting your computer to the handheld over Bluetooth. And that's why I want to use this method, which I think is the easiest method, because you don't have to have serial cables and all that. All you really need is a way for your computer to talk to this on Bluetooth, and then this outputs that signal with a cable to your radio. Okay? And what I have here, Mobilinkd does have all the cables for all kinds of different radios if you want it to look nice and pretty, or you can do what I did. And you can cut off a Bofung speaker mic cable. Notice the big coiled spot here. I cut off the speaker mic end and I soldered it to the pigtail that I had already. Ohmed it out, got a pin out. People might ask about that. But basically, this was my cable to my FT817. Now, I don't have the 817 anymore either. I was going to use the 817 for Winlink and sold that and kept the cable. So now I have my 817 cable. This is just what I did. You don't need this part in between. You can get a standard cable from here to your Bofung and not have to do this. But I utilized this with another Yaesu female here, put the two together like this, and then I soldered on the Bofung cable here, which will work with a Ushan, it'll work with a Luton, it'll work with a Kenwood, the same pin out here as Bofung, okay? So now my computer is sending over Bluetooth the information from the computer. This thing is taking it, breaking it up into the packets, and sending it over audio. It's keying the radio and sending it over RF to where it needs to go. Now, there's a couple things you want to take note. And today I'm doing this with a GD77, which is a dual band DMR and analog handheld. That's a little more than enough to do this, because you can do it with a simple Chinese handheld, even a UV5R. The only problem is this. I tried doing this today with the new RD5R that I have, although this handheld, the transmit and receive circuit, is a little slow. So by the time it goes from receive to transmit, it's missing that first bit of packet information, and it screws up the whole message. So in order for you to have this successful, you want to turn the squelch off your radio, and there are some settings that you can play with in the software online to try to take up for the delay. But in this situation, the settings I had still wouldn't work with this. So we're going to avoid this. It does, however, from past experience, work with this Luiton 10-watt handheld, which is a plain Jane radio that you program, although I lost the programming cable, so I can't put this new frequency in. So that's out of the question. So that's why I have this here, because I'm out of handhelds at this point. They're all gone. So this is, I just have this programmed to 144.9, no tones, no offsets, and we'll get into how you find out where your frequency is around you. I'll show you that now with the software. But don't let this confuse you, okay? The Bluetooth for your computer, look in the description below. I put a link for Amazon. A $5 USB Bluetooth dongle is what I'm using on my desktop. If you have a desktop or a laptop that has Bluetooth built in, great. But you're going to pair this to your computer just as if you would pair this to a phone. Password's 1234. You're going to pair it up on Bluetooth, and that takes away the wire from this to your computer. So that's one advantage of not having one of those old-fashioned TNCs that people used in the 80s and 90s. This makes it a little more streamlined. If you had something better than my idea here, you could really fasten this to the back here of the unit with the cable, how it's designed, and an antenna, and all you really have to do is link it up on Bluetooth, and you wouldn't have all this here. So this is just my setup. Let's check out the software and get into it. Winlink.org, global radio email. Picture this, guys. Picture the Puerto Rico event when the hurricane hit it and Puerto Rico lost all communications. Imagine if somebody with ham radio and capabilities there could send an email over RF from Puerto Rico to another station in the States or another area of the world and get an email out. They wouldn't feel so out of touch with the world. It's very beneficial and proves that in emergencies, this is a really neat concept and a useful concept. Now, this website, again, full of information, a plethora of all kinds of stuff to learn. And you can check out this website. There's videos here also. Maybe my video will be here one day. Who knows? And a bunch of volunteers in this big group effort keeping this going. If you feel inclined, give a donation to support this cause. A lot of videos here that you can check out. But you know, it takes a lot to keep this system going, and you know, pass the donations to them if you feel so inclined. What we're going to talk about today, though, is client software. It's available for download on here. You do have to make an account first, and not to download it, but to use it. And that's not an account to pay or to spam you. That's to keep this amateur operator related. That way they have track of, you know, amateur operators logging in to use this system. That way not any person can just get on and spam people over. Imagine if that happened. That's what we don't need. Okay? So Winlink Express is the software that's by far full of all the features that you need for this. There are other options out there and other avenues that you can do with terminal software and such. But to keep it easy, Winlink Express is what you're going to want to download. And that program looks like this. This is your Winlink Express, your mail client, your packet client. Everything is in here, and you can see that I sent a test message to Jerry earlier. But this software here, you want to go into the Express setup and put in your call sign, your password, any information, contact if you would like to, grid square and such. Set this up, hit update, and then you're going to want to next go into, now here's the options you have here. You can do Telnet Winlink. You could actually use this over internet without having a radio at all. But what fun is that to do this right now? You might as well use Outlook Express to email your brother, right? So you can do that, though, if you want to check. Let's say you're not in a radio environment at the time and you want to check your emails in your inbox. You can do that with Telnet. Or you can do it with Packet or Pactor or Winmore. Winmore is what we're going to use for HF. But right now, we're talking about Packet. Packet Winlink. You want to open the session, and if you're interested in your area to see what gateways are around you, you can go to Channel Selection and update the table, and it's going to pull up a list of gateways that are around you. These are VHF RMS gateways, and basically it's like a digipeater for APRS. It's sitting there listening for people that want to send email and providing the connection between your radio and the internet. So essentially it's a radio with a terminal node controller and everything at somebody else's location. Now in my situation, I have two that are close to me, Jerry's and Wayne's. We're going to go to Jerry's today, but you can see that There's one that's 145 kilometers away. If I wanted to, I could face my beam with an amplifier and hit that one if I really had to. But last year when I tried doing this video, this list wasn't as, I didn't have these guys close to me here. So now I do. So we're going to click on K4WOF. That's the gateway, okay? Now, you can see here that initializing KISS is the, I forgot to mention here, when you set up your TNC. Now, if you do have a Cantronics, or you do have a D700, as I had one day, or a 710, or a Tiny Track, or all kinds of different options here, we're going to use KISS. KISS is just a protocol. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what KISS stands for. KISS is basically going to sum it up to, I'm looking for the audio coming into my radio, and it's going to do everything for it in between. And my Bluetooth COM port is 11. It says serial. If I used a TNC over serial, you want to make sure you're on the right COM port. This here is a virtual COM port for my Bluetooth. So Bluetooth over COM 11, it thinks it's a serial cable connecting between. Now, here, these settings by default should work, but this is where you can adjust for, if you know what you're doing, you can adjust for your radio settings to make it work. Like if you have a radio that takes a second to key up and pass audio, you can adjust the transmit delay here. And that's for VHF 1200 baud. 9600 baud is for UHF. I've done that one time in my day with the request of somebody to set up a 9600 baud in South Florida. However, you won't find a lot of people on 9600 on UHF packet. There are probably stations out there, and I'd love for you to leave a comment and let me know your experiences if you've used 9600 on UHF before, which of course operates a lot faster and can pass data a lot more quickly. But we're going to do 1200 because even reality is 1200 baud, you can send an email in probably 15 to 20 seconds. Okay, so you hit update. At this point, you should be ready to send an email to this station over RF. Now, you want to make sure that, again, your channel selection, your radio is set here, 144.91. My radio is set there. My computer is linked up ready. And we're going to switch camera settings here so I can hopefully show you what it sounds like and what it's doing when that happens. So let's try it out. And I'm connected to a outdoor antenna, being that I'm just too far for handheld coverage. But hey, if you're close enough and you have a rubber duck on your radio, you could definitely do that. So we'll go to message and we'll make a new message. And I'm going to email it to myself. All right. And we're going to put subject test on Winlink. And we'll just put a message. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. Post to outbox. So it's kind of like a mail client. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start your session. And if you hear, you'll hear I have the packet data going. And it's drawing what's happening here. Completed send of message, and that's it. No messages received, disconnecting. That was it. I just sent an email over RF, and I'll show you here what it looks like on the other camera. Then you can see the Bluetooth receiving from the computer and sending it to the radio. And what I just got was an email that I emailed back to myself, received. Well, let's see where it is. There it is, from KJ4YZI. So I sent that to myself because essentially your email address is yourcall@winlink.org. And there's my email. This is a test of the Winlink system. That was sent from internet to my computer over radio. Okay, we're going to work on HF now. Winlink over HF. So up here, we're going to go to WinMore Winlink, which is the protocol for over HF. And I'm going to first make a message, and we'll just send this to myself. And by the way, this email here is just a junk email, so if you send anything to that, I'm not going to see it. Test email over HF on 40 meters. Okay? Now, we're going to post to Outbox, and we're going to open a session. Now, right now I got my HF radio, my FT450. I got it tuned in, all right? And I have I'm actually using an MFJ sound card interface, the MFJ 1204 that I made a video on. That's connected because now we're not using a TNC. With Winmore, we're using a sound card interface. It's sending sound to the radio on a data port in the back, and my radio is set to digital Vox. So when it hears it, it keys up and such, just like a signal link, okay? Now, first thing you're going to want to know is you want to go into settings and set up if you have a TNC. And again, I'm using microphone speakers. That's my USB sound card interface. And keep in mind this inbound session bandwidth. That determines the connection that you're making with whatever station. I'll show you here. So the channel selection. In here, the first time you run this, it's going to ask you to go to the site and download a propagation index software, which basically allows you to see in here. This is the table here. Like VHF, we had like 8 stations. There's a lot of stations here all over the world, okay? And what it's doing is when you update the table via internet, I'm not going to do it now because it takes about 10 minutes, but it's going to check the propagation predictions on each one of these stations. And it's going to determine, based on how you click this to organize it, it's going to organize and say, okay, your best bet for, if I went to 40 meters, if I organized by 40 meters, right here on 40 meters, okay, starting here, it'll show you your propagation paths based on that frequency. So I can see here, let's see, AJ4GU is what I'm going to use, okay, 63% path reliability and 44 path quality estimate. So it knows based on conditions from another source online that would be a pretty good, connection here, or pretty good propagation. If I clicked on this one here, chances are I'm not going to hear anything and it's not going to hear me. So I'm going to choose this one, double click. And keep in mind here your dial frequency. Now the frequency of that station is 7089.500 kilohertz. Basically 7.89.5 megahertz, all right? So the dial is going to be different. I want to set my radio to 7.088. It's very important. Once you do that, which I have on my radio, I'm going to click Start. And I'll turn the radio up. Make sure you listen and the frequency is clear. Click Start. It's going to start keying up. And you can hear, and you can see it just connected here. Now listen to the radio. And you can see here on the waterfall, I'm right here in the center of the frequency. Now it's establishing a connection, and I'll turn this down. All right, it's establishing a connection, and look at this constellation over here. Now, this is basically telling you what your data transmission looks like. If it looked like a big shotgun blast and it was all over, it could have been fading a lot, it could have been missing packets. You're going to want to see an X here. When you see an X here, that's kind of symbolizing that that's a good copy on the signal and passing good data. And it'll go in and out because it transmits and receives so fast. It's 300 baud, a lot slower than 1200 baud. So what it's doing is it's sending it acknowledgement. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes. All right, I'm going to send an email. Okay. Send an email. And it comes back and says, okay, here I go. I'm going to send an email. And it's going back and forth like that because if it sent this whole string of data out and it missed half of it, it'd have to do it over and over again. So all this here is just information. It's using RMS Express. This is the call sign. It's identifying. Now it's sending my email. And, this X here should be an X, but it's happening so fast it's not drawing it out here. But you can see right here, end of session, 1 minute and 36 seconds to send that email, which was one sentence, at 112 bytes a minute. And you may not need to know any of this, but you can see just for statistics what's happening. Disconnected, and that's it. It sent my email. And now it's IDing. I can hear it on my radio. It's sending a Morse code ID, and then mine sends an ID before that. So right there, I just sent an email over HF. 40 meters. The station was 717 kilometers from me. And just for your sake of knowing, I'm still having a problem with my high gain. So I'm using my MFJ 8-band cobweb that took a fall from a storm. 40 meters is still tied up, but some of the other wires are hanging now. I got to go out there and fix it. But it's only about 6 feet off the ground. I got that thing at roughly eye level in my backyard at 100 watts. I sent an email. So imagine if you had a really good antenna. You were out in the water on a sailboat, had really good conditions. Maybe a lot easier, may send a lot faster for you. But it seems that if I look at this, if I organize by frequency, it seems 80 meters is really organized here. You can see there's some really good band conditions on 80. 80 seems 80 and 40 tonight. Here's a 30 meter station, 30. And again, I can't get that cobweb on 30 right now to try it because some of the wires snapped when that thing fell. So not bad though for a cobweb that's 6 feet off the ground, halfway standing, half assembled, and it's coming apart. It took a nice fall. I didn't have it strapped up good enough, but so there you go. HF email, VHF email, a really good thing. Imagine that. If I was on Puerto Rico right now, I could have just sent an email for information from a source on what's happening, to get statistics, to get information from somebody outside of the area that had information on news in Florida or something. I could have heard all that if I was in Puerto Rico. They could have emailed it back to me. One thing to note is you want to make sure this right here is a dangerous button. Not dangerous, but scary. If you're out somewhere and you click update table via radio, it's going to be like an hour or so before it updates that. It's going to, first of all, you have to know you can connect to a station to get that information. And if you do, it's going to update all those stations, and it's going to take a long time at 300 baud. So, make sure you're not, tying up a frequency or a radio that you need for that. It's getting late, so I'm going to call it quits on the video. It's 10:13 p.m. I wanted to work all day to get this video done for you guys, so I appreciate that. Leave a thumbs up for my effort of bringing this to you, please. A comment below on something that you saw in here or something you want to know. Comments are great. I still do have some HamRadioConcepts t-shirts available. I have medium, large, and extra large left. They're selling about 5 a day, so in a few days I figure I'll be out of them. If you want one, check that video. It tells you how to purchase one. I'd appreciate the support. And 7-3 to all my followers. You guys make me possible. Thank everybody for watching. More on the way from KJ4YZI.